Well, I mean, honestly, it was really exciting to go do because,
Okay.
and again, 9/11 was a big catalyst for me, like a lot of other people, as far as
Yep.
joining the military. And all I wanted to do is go get back at the people that hurt our country. The MC-12 was definitely like a deployment that kind of scratched that itch, but I really wanted to be on the kinetic end. So it was great, like helping, ground forces and
Mhm.
finding the people that need to be found and, either in enabling their kill or capture. But when it came down to it, being the guy on the pointy end to like directly impact the fight is what I wanted to do. So when I showed up with F-16, we were initially going to go on a training deployment to the Middle East just to be there as a show of presence. Syria was really acting up at that point, so
Yep.
just having more assets in the region is kind of the focus of what we're going to do. But a few months after showing up with the squadron, ISIS really became a thing on the global stage. So our deployment shifted from a training deployment to Operation Inherent Resolve. So it was right out the gate, and at that deployment, our F-16 unit dropped the most precision-guided weapons of any F-16 unit in
Oh
history.
wow.
And then it was subsequently beaten every single time that a unit was changed out. So it was a really busy time. But I think all of us can agree, like ISIS was just a horrific organization, and seeing the stuff
Absolutely.
they did to people, um, you know, it, it it was one of those things that you wanted. I mean, for me, you wanted to make the world a better place, and knowing that these
Absolutely.
people are just doing some heinous things, whatever it took to help eradicate that hatred and ideology. Um, I don't know. It was like it's humbling to be a part of. It was something very serious and definitely warranted your full attention because we had one squadron mate who was crashed and killed while over there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a serious business. Jordanian pilot that we flew with out of our base, he was went down in Syria and captured by ISIS and murdered. So
Wow.
some
Oh yes, I do
serious,
remember that story. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So some serious stuff. That definitely it wasn't just all fun and games, but it was. I was glad I was a part of, at least had a little piece of history in that effort.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, from myself and obviously the viewers, I want to thank you for that because obviously you were there for the right reasons. So, you know, appreciate your service. But let's move on a bit because a lot of our viewers ask, especially with our American guests, did you ever work with the Brits?
Yeah. So actually, at Shaw, we had one British exchange pilot, and that exchange has been there since the 90s. It actually ended while I was there because that
Okay.
exchange position is going to go to a new billet in the F-35.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so Carney Cable, tornado pilot, great human being. He was going through the transition course while I
Hmm.
was going through the B course. So we were together in Arizona, and then went to Shaw together. We were in different squadrons, but it was a good friendship. I always loved Carney because he would like in Arizona. Like I didn't know anything about scorpions. He definitely didn't know anything about scorpions. But his thing was like everything here is just trying to kill us. Like rattlesnakes, scorpions, all
Brilliant.
sorts of things. Like in England, we don't have this. It's just rainy and overcast
Minging,
all the
yeah, it's
time.
horrible, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, and then we definitely a couple coalition red flags. And then actually in Operation Inherent Resolve, we did a lot of combined deliberate strikes with allied nations. So it was not uncommon to be involved in a strike package with
Right.
Brits, Australians, and Canadians. And then even, we would mix in a lot of our Middle Eastern countries because that was the first real conflict that a lot of Middle Eastern countries joined in. So I think we actually had one deliberate strike package with it was us, the Canadians, the Australians, the Brits, Moroccans, UAE,
Wow.
and then yeah, so yeah, going out and it was striking an oil refinery in Syria, which was quite a big fire in the end of it. But
And
you
how
know,
does that work? I mean, you probably can't get into technical details, but how does that work with the language barrier and just cultural differences? Is that a big thing for yourself?
it absolutely is. So we do a lot of, I mean, it's video teleconferencing, but one person will be designated as the mission commander, so they get what the commander's intent is, and that might be, hey, we want to destroy building X, Y, and Z. These are the assets you have, mission commander at you. You have four US F-16s, you have two Canadian Hornets, so on and so forth. they will devise a plan in order to meet the commander's intent. And then all those parties that are involved in that mission, we're going to have multiple planning sessions a day prior or 48 hours prior, whatever it might be, through video, teleconference, phone calls, and things like that. We'll build out a whole plan. And it's really impressive to see it all come together airborne when all these people are geographically separated by hundreds of miles in different bases. And as you mentioned, language barriers are usually overcome because English is the aviation language, but it definitely exists. So you have to be cognizant of that. And I think one thing that we do really well, the US, Brits, Australians, Canadians, we've grasped that there's no rank in the debrief. And we also, when we make a mistake, own it, and not try to cover it up. And that doesn't necessarily translate to all cultures. There's a lot of saving face in some cultures more so than others, to the point where it could be a detriment to the mission. So you have to balance some of those. Whereas I could tell you, hey, you really messed that up, and you would say, yep, you're right. Let's make it better for the next time. Obviously, that direct method might not necessarily work well with some of our allied nations.
So there should be essentially no pride in the debrief room or that kind of thing.
There shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a tough thing, right? I mean, human nature is you want to do well. You don't want to be embarrassed. But part of aviation is I've never had a perfect sortie. Every time you go out there, I'm going to make mistakes. You try to capture those mistakes faster each time or prevent them from happening. But undoubtedly, there's no way you will fly a perfect mission. If anyone ever says they flew a perfect sortie, I'm calling them a liar. And I think most pilots would, because you will always go out there and learn. You will always go out there and make a mistake. And owning those mistakes, and honestly, I think identifying those, figuring out what the fix is so it doesn't happen again, but then sharing that is such an important piece of aviation, because we all want to be better, and you don't want your brother to make the same mistake you did.
Absolutely.
When you could have given that bit of information.